Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick. I am Kirk Henderson, and today I am lucky enough to be joined by someone that our commenters should all know and be familiar with. But in case you're not, it's Iztok Franko. Iztok, how you doing today?
Hey, Kirk. I'm doing well. So
delighted. So we actually haven't talked like this in 2 years, and
really,
yeah, we didn't do one last season, and it probably is because we had our baby like right at the beginning of the season, and I was not in any shape to like be doing stuff, just kind of trying to keep my head on a swivel, and it's been far too long because anyone that really obsessively follows the Dallas Mavericks has to be familiar with your work. He I think the first basketball stuff you did with Mavs Moneyball?
Online, yes.
Okay, online stuff here. He was one of the last applicants that we got because every year I try to bring on 3, 4, 5 new folks, and I remember getting his talks email, and he's like, look, I'm in Slovenia. I can't contribute regularly, but I want to write stuff. And what do you know? He did contribute regularly. He parlayed that into a little bit of a writing gig, which is ongoing at D Magazine. For those of you in the Dallas area, you're probably familiar with D Magazine. He writes for the sports vertical Strong Side there. And he has recently kind of branched out on his own with a new Substack that's about 2 months old, called DigginBasketball.
Yep, yeah, 2 months. 2 months. So
2 months.
The let's say the dead end of the NBA basketball, where there's no news, no games, but it's great.
I want to talk about that a little bit, because I love that you did this in the sense of there's no better time to sort of get your bearings when nothing is going on, because it becomes much harder to sort of set patterns and habits and figure out what you want to do when the basketball is a relentless onslaught. So for those of you listening on the stream, if you will go to the description, there's a link to DigginBasketball. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, there is also a link in the show notes to DigginBasketball. You should go consider subscribing to Iztok's stuff, because I finally broke down and did it yesterday. And you already got a lot of things up, which is really fun. And you talk about in your about section just how, and you and I always kind of go back and forth over this. Like you always make a little bit of a distinction between your articles versus your observations, which is my favorite thing, because I consider it, I'm like, your thoughts are good thoughts, no matter kind of what format they're in. So could you, before we kind of branch off, I want you to give your elevator pitch for why someone should sign up for DigginBasketball.
Yeah, I think you mentioned my start at Moneyball, and I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun early days, let's say, of me trying to publish thoughts and write structurally. You talk often. It's different to tweet. It's different to talk than to write something. When you write, you need to structure things. And then even at D Magazine, it's a great opportunity to write, but it's what I really love, let's say, for me, is dissecting, and it's day-to-day ground, the process of watching the games, dissecting the game. So actually, I love the grind that comes with the NBA season. And last year, I started with Twitter previews, Twitter observations of games, every single game, 82 regular season, how many, 20 playoff games. And I love that stuff. So working on your own platform, on your own media, you can have a lot of flexibility, what you can do in terms of form, in terms of insights, in terms of shape. And this is what I want to do. And going back to what I done last 2 months, what I like about this downtime in terms of NBA coverage is give you time to think so a little bit more strategically. You write some longer pieces, but then when the game stuff, it's a grind and it's a lot of things and the fun of going through a season from the beginning to end with a lot of thought. So I think for people who 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 wants this, let's say the grind, want to see game to game what the team is doing, how it is improving, what are the trends. I think the Substack will be the place. One other thing that we will do differently is we started and we have like 2 volumes up. Is we are dissecting the analytics part of the game because a lot of people want to learn about it. A lot of people reach to me how you do it, how you do that stuff. So I'll be sharing data. I'll be sharing in the first 2 volumes the beginnings, the main concepts, and as the season go, we will try to learn this stuff together.
Yep. And so for those who are watching on the video, I am attempting to screen share the site, DigginBasketball, where you already got some player cards up for about almost half the team at this point.
Yeah, I think it was nine players, 8 players.
Yeah. Okay. So more than half the team. Yeah. There's still a lot of stuff here that you just keep going. And so if I can help sort of make the pitch to anyone else, Substack is a really like it's a very fascinating website for being able to follow very specific people and getting the content that you want and like. So it's like I pay for Mark Stein, Matt Iglesias, who is an American kind of politics writer. And then there's one guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who I follow, who does like very in-depth voter registration data stuff, because that's what I used to do for work like 1,000 years ago. And between the website and the app for the mobile, you get a lot of stuff fed to you. Did you ever use back in the day Google Reader?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And so it was Google Reader was a thing that basically funneled all the stuff that you were interested in into one app. And I see the Substack thing as a little bit of a extension of that, because let's face it, on the internet every day you have the choice of too much content. I am a content. I mean, look, I'm an editor of a website that's responsible for posting 4 articles a day. I am part of the problem. But if you're really like a hardcore Mavs fan and you want a different look that say, there's DLLS, there is Mavs Moneyball, there's Dallas Basketball, there's 5 or 6 podcasts I could mention. I will say that the kind of writing that Iztok has always done is very different than what everybody else does, and really gets into what he's mentioned in terms of the data points of view and the observations. I write like my kind of go-tos every day are you, Josh Bowe, and I love the fact that DLLS is going to make Tim work a little harder, because Tim Cato is quite good at this. I think he some days he's like worn out by the basketball of it all. Can't really blame him there after doing this since for like 10 years now. But we're at a really fun point in the Mavericks team cycle where the team is still very interesting. And so we're going to circle back to that in a little bit. But one of the things, and then this kind of, I would say Iztok and I exchange messages at least once a week about something, but I've not really had the chance to pick your brain or really kind of ask you about your experiences since you have become kind of a media figure. Like, you have a whole other career, and in Slovenia, you have had the opportunity to do some really fascinating and awesome things as a result of doing basketball writing. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sort of kind of like just telling our audience what some of the highlights have been for you, as well as what you've been doing last season. Because I bet a whole bunch of people had no idea you were doing pre and post game stuff for local television. Because I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it was kind of hand in hand. I know the guys from the past that covered the NBA games here in Slovenia.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did last year, they really invested. It's like a regional group, and Slovenia is part of the region that the group buys coverage for NBA games. So they do a lot of Dallas games, a lot of Jokic games and things like that. But what they did last year, they invested in the studio and the studio work. So we started doing it for all national for all televised games for the Mavericks. I think we did like 7, 8 regular season games and then playoff games, which was very fun because this was during the night, if you can
Right,
imagine.
middle of the night. Like you're old like me. Like how are you? Have you recovered from staying up to the middle of the night for like 2 straight months?
Yeah, that's why I said finals. They want to do every single game, but then for the games in Dallas, I actually went to Dallas. So I said I can do that. Even if I could, I wouldn't survive.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fun because the editor and the team it's a unique combination that they take things lightly, and that's great. So it's sports coverage. So and we are a good mix of characters. So Luka's dad is doing it, and he's one of the regulars next to me, and two other guys that are doing studios together. And it's always fun because watching the games with him and with the other guys, because we do pregame, halftime, and postgame. And in the middle, there is like a living room where we watch the games, we eat food, and we just have a lot of fun. So that was really, as I said, the environment that we watch these games together. And for me, it's such a different experience because all other games I typically watch in the morning through very analytical lenses, like I said, dissecting the game, sometimes play by play, making notes, things like that. And then we watch those games in the studio, and it's just fun. It's like, and this is what makes basketball fun because you can watch it in so many different ways. You can be just as a fan, enjoying the sports nature, or let's say the competitiveness, the fun part, or you can go into really analytical stuff, into tactics, into observations, things like that. And to me also, when I talk, especially with Luka's dad, it's like he sees the game so differently than I do that to me it's always a learning experience.
On that specific subject, seeing the game, do Luka and his father see the game similarly in terms of processing and stuff like that? I know that's a broad question, but I'm very interested in this.
To be honest, I don't know because I haven't talked to Luka about that.
Yeah.
But I think they're in a similar way, similar kind of characters, if you know. But I mean this on the positive side,
Sure.
If I don't know, I'll give you one example. When I was writing about one of the analytics volumes, the last one, when we talk about history of analytics, I wrote about Kristaps Porzingis, right?
Yep.
And he is a guy who dissects the game. He studies the game. I wrote about how he changed his game, and in Washington he worked with the analytics OG Dean Oliver, who wrote the first book about analytics, or the most 20 years ago, and he was working on the Washington Wizards staff. And he was like one of the only, or still probably was the only guy, analytics person who was an assistant coach. So it's not like in a let's say back office in the analytics department, but he was on the bench. So he was talking about how he worked with Kristaps, how Kristaps were great about numbers, post-up game, things like that. But I think sometimes over-analyzing the game for a player could be hard, because you see all this data, all this noise, and start to affect you. And I think, going back to your question, I think Luka and his dad are total opposite about it. So
that's very interesting.
They don't really let that noise. It's about confidence, So forget all about. Is this as you can see also Luka playing? It's this borderline irrational confidence at times that makes him so great. Because imagine, I mean, if you look his whole career, he was playing against taller, stronger, better athletic-wise players. In some ways, we know that Luka has other things where he's very athletic, but if you are not the most confident guy on the court, he would never be where he is now.
I'm saying this out loud because I want to circle back to it when we talk Mavericks specifically. I have a question about Luka's shooting, and I just don't want to forget it because I've been thinking about it since I was staring at some stats earlier this week. Anyways, so you're right about watching games with people. I hadn't watched a game with anyone other than my wife in about 4 years. And at my 40th birthday party, it was the closeout game of Oklahoma City. And I invited just like anybody I could possibly think of. And it was like 70 people in a room watching this game. It was great. It's basketball is really fun with people, especially high stakes value game. It gave me kind of it reminded me of like why I really got into it in the first place. But so that's one pretty good example. Have you, I think I know the answer to this, but I want to ask anyways. Have you done any like travel in relation to covering basketball, and where, and if so, like kind of where have you gone, and what have you seen since you've been doing the media stuff?
So going to Dallas has been.
Oh yeah, you did come here twice. That's right.
3 times actually, last 3 years. So the finals was for me, I don't know, probably not just for me, right? It's like, I think most people in the Dallas media, okay, we know some are there. I don't know. I talked to Followill, I talked to Jack Cooperstein. They've been doing this for 20 years. So they experienced the finals in 2011. But the younger generation didn't. And I had the opportunity to see from the media perspective 2 times before a chunk of 5 regular season games in Dallas, and then comparing that to the finals, it's like complete different experience. I was also in Madrid last year when the Mavs played Real Madrid in this Europe. You remember they went to Abu Dhabi first, and then they went to Madrid. So it was the first game for Luka back, and it was also awesome just to see how popular he is in Spain, and how people in Spain, I wrote an article about that for V Magazine, how people in Spain, they think of him as a Spanish boy. That's why they said to me, like, he's ours, and it also explains why he has so many fans worldwide, not only in Slovenia or US or in Texas, but also, for example, in Spain.
That stretch of games, those first 3 games, I remember thinking how funny it was that poor Derek Lively, 7'1", 240-pound monster of a human, his first 3 games, he played centers who were all bigger than him, which it probably never happened in his life. Because then Eddie Tavares, is that who?
Yeah, he played against Minnesota twice in Abu Dhabi, against Rudy. So I guess he remembered that based on the comments on his last.
That's right. It's just I really like thinking about it. Well, that's pretty cool. Okay, so all right, I love bringing on my friends and talking about what they're doing, because oftentimes what they're doing is so much more interesting than what we do at Mavs Moneyball, because all of us we're all fans that make the time for basketball stuff. And so it's always interesting to hear what people who've turned this into an element of a job are doing. We talked, like my friend Adam Mares of All City was on last week, and we talked about his kind of his podcast with Tim Legler. And I like hearing how people are doing. Now, I promise, guys, we're going to talk Maverick stuff just in a second here. So I want to make a quick pitch. I'm going to insert some ads here for the audio, but if you guys are new here, consider subscribing. Josh Bowe and I swear to goodness, we will begin posting regularly again. Josh is actually able to post this week, but I told him just to take the week off and prepare his brain for the onslaught of basketball again, because like you said, it's 100 games if you make it to the NBA finals, and there's just a lot of things ahead. I will be doing my secondary live show at some point soon. It's the off-season stuff. We have media day on Monday. There's just a lot of the Mavericks stuff is turning on like that. We're going to go from nothing to everything very quickly.
On Monday.
Right. It's crazy. Like Tim, who is hanging out in the comments, these guys at All City are like doing podcasts every day. And I'm like, on what? There's nothing to talk about yet, which like there is, but you're kind of extrapolating. I love once the players are talking and you get the coaching BS and all that sort of thing. So the spigot's about to turn on. But so consider adding to our show to the part of your rotation. And I'm going to insert some ads, and then Iztok and I will be right back. Okay, thank you for hanging out with us, guys. Joined with my friend Iztok Franko of DigginBasketball. I will make another closing pitch at the end of the show for you to subscribe to his Substack, which is fantastic. Okay, so, all right, I got that Luka question on the top of my brain. But for you, what is, with how you think about basketball and the way you approach the game. What are kind of your top line most interesting thing about the Dallas Mavericks heading into this 2024-25 campaign?
I think most is difficult, but
Mm-hmm.
one thing for sure is you talked about Luka, how they respond. I think how they respond to the finals, how motivated, how let's say how hungry he comes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think knowing him, he won't be satisfied with just the finals. I think they want to get back and win it. But then the whole other thing is, I think, and this is what I wrote today in the magazine when we talked about win predictions, I expect like a really dominant regular season from them, which hasn't happened basically in Luka's career so far in Dallas. They had 52 win season, 50 win season, 48. What I wrote is basically whenever you put a semi-competent team around Luka, there is, let's say, automatic 48 to 50 wins. But even if you look at the two most successful years, so the 2022, 21-22, when they reached the West Finals, Conference Finals, and last year when they reached the Finals, both of these teams, they were formed in mid-season, with mid-season trades. And so this is the first time I would say that there is like a very good team around Luka, and that the team is formed going into regular season, plus they're coming off of some continuity of run to the NBA Finals. We know that, let's say, there was always a lot of turmoil, not a lot of fixing, but this whole playoff run, it's so intense. Some people say playoff games. I think JJ Redick says like 3 regular season games, and if you look at like these 20 games, it's like a whole season. These guys went together, and I think they should build on that. So for me, the biggest thing this season is I think this team shouldn't have any excuses to be really good. And by really good, I think top 1, 2, 3 in the West.
So, yeah, that is my absolute hope from my position. I think we so you and I, it's okay to say this now. It's okay to admit when we're wrong. And I think you and I were among the group of people when the Mavericks hired Jason Kidd before the 21-22 season. We're basically saying, why? What are we doing? Then they made the Western Conference Finals after finding a defensive scheme where Dwight Powell was the center of it all, which is one of those historical anomalies that's not going to make sense towards the tail end of Luka's career. Then year 2, obviously very bad, but like you mentioned, they just had some roster deficiencies. Year 3, they switch up the roster midway through the season and become a truly dominant defense where I think the Mavericks were one of the key beneficiaries of the interpretation of the rules. And I'm hopeful the emphasis in the rule, because I really enjoyed the way basketball was played following Luka's 73-point explosion. And so it's okay to say that we were incorrect about Jason Kidd. Now, you had mentioned before about the lack of a dominant regular season. And I think that absolutely does have to be the goal. And each year, 3 years previous, you can look into the different things that have gone, that have or haven't gone the Mavericks way and say, all right, these are the excuses. These are why these things didn't happen. When I look at the way this roster is constructed, the Mavericks are filled with options to problem solve. And I am really looking forward to that element of this, because beyond, the personality aspect that Kidd's going to have to figure out with the different guys like Klay Thompson, and I'm sure his minutes will go up and down. There's just a lot of different options that Jason Kidd has to solve problems, which is a much more fun way to cover a team than, let's say, the team that had JaVale McGee and Christian Wood, where instead of solving problems, he's trying to figure out how to patch holes. Like that, because this Mavericks team, I've been thinking about goofy lineups they could do. There's just going to be a lot of fun data for you to comb through by around game 40. Like the lineup data is going to be weird, I bet, because they theoretically in a given night, Jason Kidd could play 11 to 12 guys if he wanted to. And I'm really looking forward to that part.
Yeah. One of the last pieces I wrote for my Substack was basically about the I call it not so small ball that they play. And this is the lineup with PJ Washington and Maxi Kleber at 5. And we all love the Mavericks going big with Lively. I said in an article, Lively is the future, of course, and Gafford. But it was a thing that they missed in the finals. Because in the finals, Boston kind of forced them into this switching basketball, and they switch everything. And when that happened, you need to space the floor and let more room for Luka and Kyrie, and they didn't have that in the finals. They played 2 non-shooters at all time, like Lively or Gafford or Derrick Jones Jr., and the things were so clogged up. So I said, imagine putting Maxi, PJ Washington, and Klay Thompson around. You have so much more space. And this is just one of the possibilities that you mentioned. And this is exactly what you said. Last year or the year before, they had so many holes, and one injury happened last year at the beginning of the season. When Kyrie went down and Lively missed games, they were terrible. Where these 3 guys played, or even just Luka and Kyrie, they won at 70% win rate, which is like 57-game win season. But they didn't have, let's say, the depth and enough good players to compensate for the injuries when that happens. And I think this season they have that. I think this season they can survive when Luka will miss a game, or they can survive if Kyrie misses a game, because they can use Klay. They brought in Spencer in the ball handling department. They still have Dante Exum. And on the wings, they will have a lot of options. Plus, the first season with 2 legit centers. So it's the first time for a full season. So I think this is something that should be very exciting. Legitimately, I did a depth chart. One of my first pieces on Substack was just looking at the depth chart, and it's like legit 14 players that should expect minutes.
Yeah.
And probably it's going to be just 9-10. So there's going to be a lot of players. I think they have at least 14 NBA players,
The defensive part, defense is something that takes me a lot more time to watch over and over again. And our Seth Partnow, another massive name in the NBA analytics community, told me once, where it's like, what you think should happen in NBA defenses is not what is often. It's not high school basketball. It's not lower level stuff. These guys are such incredible athletes. There was often situations where, like, Tim Hardaway before the trade was like having to be the guy, passing off rim protection with the way that other teams would put the Mavericks in a blender. Some of I've been looking, just kind of like writing down ridiculous lineup ideas that I would like to see the Mavericks try. And, when the Mavericks are trying to close out a game, sometimes they really slow the offense all the way down and play, just kind of keep away for 24 seconds. But if they wanted to do some things this year, they could roll out a lineup. This is, probably never happened, but I like this as an idea. You have Luka with the ball. You have, where did he go here? You could play Quentin Grimes, who I think I'm really interested to see him play defense within Kids' system. Najee Marshall, PJ Washington, or our guy Maxi Kleber and Derek Lively. Like, they have actual defensive options to, and granted, that offensive team is not very good, but if you're just trying to keep a team from scoring and like grind out a game and let Luka eat up a shot clock, there's just going to be some fun stuff. And, the one thing that I think we as kind of fans that like to be like fantasy general managers misunderstand is that this team does have some older players. Older players get hurt. And they have enough depth now to absorb, if Luka does hurt his thigh again, because, he just guys hit him in the thigh and he needs to take 4 games off, Dallas can probably make that work. And they did last year with Kyrie Irving kind of playing some of the best basketball of his entire career. But now they can do it in a way where it's just the responsibility gets passed down. There's different options. Now is where I want to ask you my question regarding Luka's shooting. So last year, Luka took a leap in volume from 3 and percentage from 3. He went from something like 34.2 to 38.2 from 3-point, 4 percentage points And he went from like 8 3-pointers a game to 10. To go up in volume and up in percentage, I don't really have context to explain that to people, because that's when Luka went from being a MVP guy you talk about to an MVP candidate. Is, in your opinion, is that shooting real, or is it an outlier?
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, his shooting is like kind of like all shooters. I think it's not just him, but it's kind of up and down. We see that it regressed a little bit in the playoffs. But also going back last year, I think was in terms of Luka is always at the top of NBA in share of unassisted, so self-created buckets and threes. So he takes most of his threes off the dribble. But last year it was his I think career year in terms of assisted buckets and especially threes. So catch and shoot threes, he got some easier looks. Dallas played faster. I think when I did Dante Exum player card, it was like how many things Dante created for him, just finding him like a trailer on a catch and shoot in transition. So things like that. They had the Exum, who is a great connector, Kyrie, who can pass. So I think some of that improvement was him getting at least some catch and shoot looks, which should be easier. They weren't always for him in the past, but I think that is one aspect of the shooting that he improved. But as for overall, I think if he's close to that 38% this season, Arizona is going to be very happy, because you cannot compare that 38% of his, I don't know, to Klay Thompson 49%, because, as I said, still 85% of his are step back threes or threes off the dribble. So they're much more difficult shots.
Yeah. The catch and shoot, it became, I want to say, and I have not seen the synergy data in some time, but I remember at one point someone told me that he shot more catch and shoot 3-pointers last year than like the 3 previous years combined. Like it's the kind of volume, and he is a, I mean, it sounds stupid.
The bar was very low.
Right. Well, at one point in time, though, guys, like earlier in his rookie year, you're looking at the volume. Not maybe it was like rookie in year 2. The volume of threes he was shooting, he was like the lowest percentage 3-point shooter for a high volume shooter in the league. He was like at like dead, like he was shooting like 7 a game and shooting like 32%. And the fact, like, I just, when you talk about some of these guys, and it's, the paradox of guys once they reach the MVP level is there aren't fewer questions about their game at that point. There are more, because it's what are the little things that they can improve on. And so, we were talking in the Mavs and Moneyball Slack earlier today. I asked somebody looked up like the gambling over under on the Luka assists this year is 9.2, which seems preposterous. He finished last year at 9.8. And Trey is at something like 10.7. Like, I think Luka is going to really like challenge for the assist record this year. Maybe not scoring, because if his scoring peels back, I think that actually works out for the best, because it means slightly lower usage, hopefully, different minute counts. But I'm just there's just so much to look forward to with Luka's game, because every year it's you don't really know what to expect. And you start going through his stats and then his advanced stats, and you're like, well, where can he improve one year to the next? Because he burst on the scene in 1920 for his second year and was an MVP candidate. And I remember thinking this, like, I wasn't expecting this until he was 27. And he's still just 25. It's really fun I tell people, because, the online discourse involving Luka gets really ridiculous very quickly. But what we're watching right now is one of the like potentially like 30 best players ever right now. He's just so good. It's so much fun to watch him. Oh man, I had my list of questions and now I cannot find it anymore. So now we're going to go take a look at your Substack, because that was what was generating some of my thoughts here. All right, so past Luka Doncic, is there anyone when you've been doing your player cards, is there anyone that jumps out to you that you think is in need of a big season for the Mavericks to have a high level of success?
I mean, one thing that we discussed with Luka and the overall trend, and you said the change in how the NBA was refereed, but it's also what the Mavericks did that part of the season was they basically traded size for shooting, not only with the trades, but also by benching Hardaway and things like that. So what happened in the finals is they were always top 1 or 2 in three-point shooting volume or frequency, but that really regressed. And in the finals, I think Boston had almost twice the three-point range the Mavericks had. So this was one thing. One of the reasons was because they were switching so much, so there was not so many kickouts to open threes. But this is one of the big things that I think I wrote this in the set fact, why I think the Mavericks could be a top 5 offense again, is just if you look who they added. So they added Clint Thompson, which is the highest volume catching three, so not off the dribble like Luka or Kyrie, but highest volume catch and shoot shooter in the NBA history. And compared to Hardaway was incredibly high volume. I don't know, 7 or 8 threes per game. Plays at 9 per 36, I think, and he's making them as a much better clip. So Hardaway is an average shooter, but Clay is like a really high volume, great shooter. You mentioned Quentin Grimes. Again, when I did his first analysis, one of the things jumped out is that he has the highest three-point frequency or volume, if you look per 36 minutes, of any 3-and-D guys in recent history. So take Dodo, take Bullock, take, I don't know, Josh Green is not a high volume. But all the guys who really shot a lot of threes, Quentin Grimes is shooting them much more. Which again, I think these are some of the things that will correct some of the parts of the Mavericks offense that was really just lobs and trying to look and Kyrie mid-range game. So I think wrapping up that three-point volume will do a lot for this offense being even better. Then the other guy who is the most obvious to look at is Najee Marshall, right?
Okay.
So he will have to fill the Derrick Jones Jr. role. So somebody will have to be this step up and be the best defender, taking the toughest assignment. And I think it's either going to be him or Grimes, but I think Najee Marshall, how he does in this role, his shooting is also like with Derrick Jones Jr., it's a big question mark. He had a great season last year. He was around 39 or even 40% or 48, something like that. But if you look at the last 4 years, I think he's only Russell Westbrook is worse catch and shoot three-point shooter. So that's going to be a big thing for him. But I think Najee Marshall trying to bring that toughness. He has also a different skill set. Again, if you look at other 3-and-D guys, he's the guy who is really, and I don't think people know this about his game, but he's really prefers to drive and pass. So of all the 3-and-D options that Mavs have in the last 5 years, I think he's driving the most, passing the most, dribbling the most. So he can do stuff off the dribble, which will be funny. It will be interesting if that will be leveraged properly within the Mavericks offense, or will be his shooting will be the problem. So there is something. But we saw it. The good thing, I think, with Luka and J. Kidd is they try to find these guys' roles. Derrick Jones Jr., for example, had a lot of question marks. He was a career backup, a 9 or 10 man, but he flourished in this offense and in Dallas and in the system.
Well, it's so funny because for most of the year, you don't really think about ball handling and the ability to drive and move, because when you have Luka and Kyrie, 90% of the opportunities are taken up. Then you run into the Boston Celtics team. Yeah. You just need the multiple option stuff. And PJ Washington kind of got his this is not fair to PJ, because I thought PJ did a great job. But elements of where he was rougher around the edges kind of got exposed that series. His skill improvement is something I'm very much looking forward to this year. Najee Marshall, I think, Could be wrong, but I want to say Najee Marshall is incredibly strong too. And I'm looking forward to that element of the game because, Derrick Jones Jr., again, not his fault. For a minimum signing, he outperformed every possible expectation we could have had from as Mavericks observers. But he got bullied by the Celtics. And I'm sort of looking forward to seeing if the Mavericks have like that tougher perimeter option, like you're talking about. So that's a good one. Well, go ahead.
No. Defense-wise, I think Derrick Jones Jr. was better, like on screen navigation, chasing guys, defending the pick and roll. But when it comes to, like you said, bigger wing players like Tatum, like Jaylen Brown, or I don't know, even KD, LeBron, I think Najee Marshall, in that regard, is a better defender.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so, all right, I told you to keep you about 40 minutes. We're right at the 40-minute mark. Is there anything else that take-wise, thought-wise, that you'd like to get off your chest?
Take-wise. Hot takes. No,
just anything we haven't covered that's kind of noodling around in your brain that you don't mind giving away.
No, I think this is when I did the rotation piece and player cards. I think it goes back to the depth and the team that we were talking about. To me, who gets this first ball handler of the bench role in training camp is going to be amazing to watch. So bringing back Spencer is kind of let's say, not a great vote of confidence for Dante and for Jaden Hardy. So these three guys battling who will be the first backup point guard of the bench is going to be fun. And I'm just also looking to see if Derek Lively starts at the beginning of training camp, because I think they kind of kept Gafford starting in the playoffs, but it was obvious, as good as Gafford is, that Lively is just so much better. And all the data, even if you watch, the team was so much better with Lively. So it will be interesting to see how soon they start Lively, and if they do, I think Daniel Gafford is one of the best backup bigs in the NBA. And the biggest question mark, but I don't think this will happen soon, is probably Clay Roll. So do they move him at some point before the playoffs? Do they try him off the bench? Because I think long-term wise, probably that's the best role, because he can come in, stagger the minutes with Luka, Kyrie. So when first, typically Kyrie would go, and then you sub in Clay in, you play with two guys, he gets more touches, and you solve the perimeter defense. We said you can then start Najee, or you can start Dante, you can start Grimes to take the toughest assignment on defense, and just to reduce the pressure. But I don't think that's gonna start. That's gonna happen early in the season. They're gonna start him for sure. But this is something that we will, at least I will, try to see how it evolves during the season.
It's going to be very hard for me to not talk about in the first 20 games, particularly if Clay looks bad on defense, because to me, where they are, if in the life cycle of the team and kind of their championship window is always close faster than fans and teams realize. They are in it right now. This is the year for me before where they have kind of the perfect blend, where it doesn't seem like there's really any ego things around the fringes, possibly like messing with team chemistry. You mentioned the Lively versus Gafford thing. Like, I think both of them are at this point with what they talk about. They want to do what's best. They're not worried. Go ahead.
Going back to J. Kidd, I think this is one of the thing that, like you said, it's frustrated at the beginning so much, this early first 40 games, with Joel starting, with Hardaway starting. But I think he kind of sometimes let things develop on their own. So the team figures out what's the best, so he's not forcing the issue. And then they don't have these chemistry problems. They usually are all locked in the roles going into the playoffs. So I think something that's maybe frustrating for us watching from afar.
Or like, why don't you just fix it?
And just go to the ultimate starting five, and why he was starting Paul. But I think, especially with Wets, he kind of gives them the respect And then I think when they see what's the best for the team, then it's much easier for them to buy in the roles.
So I'm not sure if you've ever read this book, but if you can, I know you're a fan of his work. So Bob Sturm at the Ticket wrote a book on the Mavericks winning the title in 2011. It's called This Year Will Be Different. And Bob, he watches basketball, but basketball's like his third sport. But this book is great because it has so many insights.
What's the second?
So have you read it? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't. But
you're gonna like this story. So he did some really, really top-notch reporting for this book. It's available on for Kindle or for ebook. It's like $3. He'd be pleased as punch that you read it. But he said there's a story that the Mavericks started, like, nobody remembers this, but Roddy Beaubois started like 65 games for the Mavericks. And so right before the playoffs, Kidd, Dirk, and like one other guy basically went to Carlisle and were like, you've got to stop playing this guy. You've got to. This just isn't the year for him. Kind of having to tell Rick this. And I think about that a lot in the context of what Kidd does over the course of a long season, because you have to know when to play specific cards as part of a team, workplace environment, whatever it is. Because if you're wrong about the timing, that can almost be more detrimental to team chemistry than anything else. Or it may, that bump that you're hoping for, the change that you're hoping to inspire might only last a certain period of time. And it's like, it pains me as a person who is stubborn to admit that Kidd is so much better at this stuff now than I ever would have thought possible relative to his previous coaching jobs, because it's like he presses the right buttons at the right time. Like his post-game quotes used to drive me crazy. And now I'm just like, all right, this is fine. Like it's going to work. They've been to the finals and the conference finals. This works.
No, true. It's like, that's where he earns his paycheck, right? So even if you look last year with just what we thought was going to be the challenge of managing Kyrie, and it's gonna Kyrie flourished, and now Clay, even Luka. I think you can see that Luka respects J. Kidd, all the other players respect him. So this is something that's a lot of coaches say that X and O's are the easy stuff. Managing the locker room, managing the team is the difficult part. And I would say, just based on the superstar capacity and egos that he has, I think he's doing a great job in that.
And I want everyone to remember that I'm saying this for when I get really pissed at him in like game 6 for something stupid that doesn't matter. It's not my fault. Anyway,
Kirk, when the else happened during the season, I always listen to your podcast on the walk just to listen to the venting. I need it as well. As analytical as Lucas there, he calls me. We were joking, because how different is watching the game, and it's like analysis by paralysis by analysis, So as analytical as I can be, I need the venting as well. So
that's right.
You're doing somebody has to say something.
Somebody, that's right. Okay, so guys who are watching along the video, I have posted the link to Iztok Substack, DigginBasketball.substack.com. Really recommend going and giving it a look. The subscription, when you consider how much time we spend on this stuff, my father always told me, he's like, you're at the age now where you need to start paying for the things that are of value to you. So I get for the things that are of value to me, guys, good socks, athleisure pants, and honestly, media and the different medias that help improve the quality of my life. This is, and Iztok's thing is going to be one of those purchases. So, my friend, thank you so much for taking part of your evening, staying up late with us to talk a little basketball. We will have you on during the season. You can check out Iztok's work at DigginBasketball.substack.com and at D Magazine on the Strong Side blog every great now and again. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been fun.
Thanks, buddy. Hope to do it again soon.
All right, guys, go Mavs. We'll talk soon. Bye.